So I'm flying the M24 gyro again, and I've been putting quite a lot of effort into trying to figure out how to land it. But even after a couple of hours experimenting, it really is hard to get this thing to land softly. Now, I did watch some real world videos of M24 landings, and the surprise there was the approach speed is really high, between 60 and 70 miles per hour. And that's whether dead stick or under power. And in both cases the approach was very steep. Another thing I've come to realise is that the rotor speed is very significant. If you think about it, that rotor disc only acts like a wing if it's spinning sufficiently fast. And the amount of lift is, I suppose, a function of the rotor RPM. Now those rotors turn as they're pulled through the air, either by the engine or by gravity, or both. With the engine off or at idle, we only have one variable, which is how steeply we point the nose towards the ground. And although it's tempting to focus on the airspeed, it's that rotor RPM that's the crucial value. Now the rotor speed should remain fairly constant, and in the real world videos it stays around 350. This works well enough in the sim, and in fact you'll find that the pre-rotator tops out at 350 RPM. So that's probably an acknowledgement to realism. But you're going to find that 350 is way too high to make landings without just floating endlessly down the runway. Now, interestingly enough, my experiments have shown me that at any rotor speed under 200 RPM, it's actually impossible to climb, regardless of the power setting. As an experiment, if you let it drop below 200 RPM and hold it there with the stick back, let's say, and then add power to as far as maximum power, you're not going to climb. But then if you allow it to nudge just over the 200 RPM, you're going to shoot up like a rocket. Now this suggests there's some kind of artificial boundary at 200 RPM, and we need to pay attention to this if we want to get the landings credible. And in passing, I'm pretty sure that critical rotor speed of 200 or less than 200 RPM is what gets us into that pathological state that we saw in the previous video, which is where we appear to stall and spin in some sense and basically can't recover. And so that makes some kind of sense. You know, in the real world, I guess if the rotor speed falls critically low, it probably is unrecoverable. So as a general rule, when you're in the business of trying to land, it's best to fly with the rotor around, let's say 250 RPM, and then try to arrive in the flare just at about 200 RPM, and that'll pretty much guarantee that it'll drop you to the ground. Now obviously the balance here is you don't want to drop from too high. So, and of course the difficulty is it's hard to get anything in between, even with power. A burst of throttle just at the right time will help, but too much and you'll just shoot back up again. And so it's that rotor RPM in the flare that seems absolutely critical, and it drops extremely quickly as you pull back, and as a collateral to that the airspeed drops precipitously as well. There is a sneaky trick you can try. You can leave the pre-rotator engaged at maximum pre-rotation, and that does help keep the RPM from dipping too low. It'll still go below 200 depending on what you do with the stick, but it does keep it from getting too low. Now whether that actually makes it easier to fly or more controllable, I haven't really decided yet. It doesn't actually seem to be as significant as I expected it to be. So for consistent landings in a reasonably short distance, I found that a glide approach at 40 miles an hour on the clock works fairly well, although you'll still inevitably get a clunk at the end, even if you control the flare very well. It is possible to get a gentle touchdown with a blip of throttle at just the right moment, but you need a big blip, it needs to be very well controlled, and it's really hard to do that, consistently at least. So there it is, the Magni M24 Autogyro. It's a little bit more complicated than it at first appears, and it is kind of interesting to just experiment with this controllability. And as we've seen, I think we have to throw away the real world numbers to have any hope at flying it rationally, certainly through the landing. So let me know what you think, what your experience is, and if you've got any other tips, and we'll be back.